It's time for Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott, inviting the atheist, agnostic, and skeptic to examine for themselves the evidence for the Christian faith. We are all limited by what we do not know and by the things we think we know but are not true. Dr. Joe Mott earned his PhD at LSU and was a distinguished math professor at Florida State University for 38 years, helping to write 3 math textbooks and authoring over 30 research articles in math. He is now the host of this radio program, Defending and Commending the Faith. Here is Joe Mott.
Hello to everyone. Welcome to the program. Followers of Christ are still being called into action for defending and commending the Christian faith. Previously, I had begun to discuss in nutshell form 6 key tenets of Darwinian evolution. I have already discussed tenet 1, common descent with modifications, also known as common ancestry. The second tenet is spontaneous generation, which means that life arose from non-life. Darwin took for granted spontaneous generation without offering supporting evidence in his 1859 book on the origin of species. Later, the scientists Fransesco Redi, John Needham, and Louis Pasteur disproved spontaneous generation. Cliff Knecktle says atheists believe in 6 miracles. 1, life comes from non-life. 2, existence comes from non-existence, from the Big Bang. 3, order comes from chaos. 4, personal comes from non-personal. 5th, reason comes from non-reason. And 6th, morality comes from matter. In terms of the 6th miracle, do atheists really believe that a stone can give the 10 commandments? Here is one logical danger if that false claim that life comes from non-life is kept as a part of evolution. If you start a discussion with a false premise, you can end up proving any other true or false claim using this same false premise. So that is not a good way to start a debate or a conversation. Despite their obvious differences, creationists and evolutionists do agree on several things. For example, they both agree that 1, the universe and life came into existence in the past. 2nd, these origins were one-time events, not repeatable by humans, nor were they observed by any human witness. 3rd, we do not have and probably never will obtain direct knowledge of how these origins occurred, regardless of how many ways we demonstrate that they could have occurred. And 4th, individual variation and microevolution have occurred. But the agreement disappears when we bring up the subject of macroevolution. Perhaps it's advantageous to recall the definitions of these 2 terms. Microevolution refers to small-scale evolutionary changes, typically within a single population, that occur within a population or species over a relatively short period of time. In contrast, macroevolution refers to significant evolutionary changes that occur over long periods, often resulting in the emergence of new species. Microevolutionary changes are often directly observable and can be experimentally tested, such as coloration of a population. Macroevolutionary changes are typically inferred from the fossil record, comparative anatomy, and molecular data, making them less directly observable. Let's return now to the 6 tenets of Darwinian evolution. Darwin assumed the basis of life, the cell, was uncomplicated, maintaining the cell was essentially a blob of material enclosed by a membrane called protoplasm. But Darwin did not know all the functions of the cell, neither did he know about DNA. Darwin did not know what the key role of genes in an organism is to store and transmit hereditary information, guide the synthesis of proteins, regulate biological processes, and ensure the inheritance of traits, making them essential for life, growth, and adaptation. He did not know that genes are segments of DNA that give your cells instructions for specific traits or body functions. He did not know that genes come in pairs. You get one copy from each biological parent. One of the most important causes of the creation/evolution controversy is the misunderstanding of words. The word evolution causes much confusion because of its several meanings, implications, and misuses. When someone asks, "Do you believe in evolution?" are they asking about the scientifically demonstrable changes within a species, called microevolution, or of the undemonstrated theory of evolution, where new species develop over millions of years, macroevolution, or are they asking for both? The simplest definition of evolution is change over time that everyone will accept. Otherwise, just get the objector to watch the age spots grow in his hands. That is agreed a fact. But under a broader term of evolution, it is not obvious that evolution is a fact. There is no conflict between creationists and evolutionists with regard to the two lower levels of evolution, that is, individual variation and microevolution. There is, however, a definite conflict with regard to macroevolution, and the conflict is enlarged over the evolutionists' use of a single term to refer to all levels of change. Later I will refer to the 3 stages of Darwinian evolution and Ernst Mayer's standard definition of evolution. Given Darwin's ignorance about cellular activity and the false presumption of spontaneous generation and the various uses of the term evolution, why should you consider his view of evolution to be the basis for your worldview? I believe it was Stephen Jay Gould, the Harvard paleontologist, who said evolution is fact, fact, fact. But if no supporting evidence to substantiate that claim, then it is merely opinion, opinion, opinion. Many scientists and philosophers of science have described evolution as fact and theory, following a phrase Stephen Jay Gould used as the title of a 1981 article. The third tenet of Darwinian evolution is random mutation. Minor changes in the DNA code are thought to occur spontaneously within a creature. The hypothesis is that most of these changes are caused by accidental copying errors that happen when the creature's genetic code is copied at the time of reproduction, or outside radiation and chemicals could be a part of the cause for the errors. That sounds reasonable. Darwin's theory also makes the following assumption. The result of these mutations can be combined to form a new creature, slightly different from the first, depending on the nature of these changes. Most importantly, the new creature will either be better or less prepared to survive in its environment. But here is the truth. Most mutations are harmful to a creature, so a large number of mutations would be necessary in order to increase the chances that the mutation would be beneficial. This increase will give more mutations, but I suspect that the increased number of mutations will actually make it less probable that mutations would be beneficial. The fourth point of the 6 factors is natural selection. Darwin observed a struggle for survival in which the stronger creatures survived and the weaker ones died off. This is what he called natural selection. My question is, how do we know the survivors were stronger? With all this randomness going on, could it not be that the survivors were just randomly selected for survival? Could it not be that what looks like strength actually covers a weakness? I have in mind the example that many long-distance runners worldwide actually have blocked arteries which are dangerous to their health. For example, that caused the death of a famous runner, James Fix. The long-distance runners survived many years having blocked arteries. So in a sense, they survived though their weakness was covered over. Darwin reasoned that a mutation that resulted in a weaker creature would cause it to be eliminated. That might be reasonable, but is it true? No evidence is given to support Darwin's conclusion. By contrast, a mutation that increased the viability of a creature would give an advantage in the struggle for survival. Was there any evidence beyond his assumption? I repeat, if a truth claim is made without supporting evidence, then the truth claim is nothing more than opinion. Then opinions are like noses on your face. Everybody has one. In the 4th chapter of the book, The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins says that natural selection is the only known solution to the unanswerable riddle of where the information of the origin of life, etc., comes from. Dawkins also said, natural selection not only explains the whole of life, it also raises our consciousness to the power of science to explain how organized complexity can emerge from simple beginnings without any deliberate guidance. Dawkins continues, but Darwin in evolution, specifically natural selection, shatters the illusion of design within the domain of biology and teaches us to be suspicious of any kind of design hypothesis in physics and cosmology as well. Dawkins offers no evidence to confirm Dawkins' affirming that natural selection shatters the illusion of design, nor that supports his suspicion of any design hypothesis. In the book, The Blind Watchmaker, natural selection, the blind, unconscious, automatic process which Darwin discovered, and which we now know is the explanation for the existence and apparently purposeful form of life, has no purpose in mind. It is the blind watchmaker. So Dawkins claims that natural selection is the explanation for the existence of life. That is a strange claim. Natural selection only operates after living organisms have produced offspring. I asked Britannico.com the question, can natural selection explain the origin of life? Here is their answer. Natural selection cannot explain the origin of life. The theory of natural selection is a process that explains how species evolve over time through adaptation of organisms to their environments. Allow me to close this episode by reminding you, exercise daily, walk with God.
Thank you for listening to Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott, a production of Wave 94 Radio in Tallahassee, Florida. If you have any questions or comments for Joe, please forward them to Doug Apple at Wave94 at this email address, dougapple@wave94.com. And be sure to join us every Monday evening at 6:45 p.m. on Wave 94 and subscribe through your favorite podcast app. Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott.